Lamar Jackson in a Miami Dolphins uniform. Just typing that sentence feels wrong, doesn't it? But here's the uncomfortable truth every Ravens fan needs to sit with right now. This scenario isn't some wild internet rumor floating around social media. It's a real possibility sitting right there in black and white, buried inside Lamar's own contract. And that changes the way you should be watching this entire offseason play out. So, how do we get here? How does a two-time MVP, the face of this franchise, end up with his name attached to a quarterback search happening in South Florida? The answer starts with a contract that was supposed to lock Lamar down for years, and instead left the door open just enough to make you a little nervous every time you think about it. Let's start with a part of this that's been sitting quietly in the background for months. Lamar Jackson is under contract with the Ravens through the 2027 season. On paper, that sounds like security. In reality, there's a massive catch buried in the fine print, and it's the kind of detail that changes everything once you actually understand it. None of Lamar's $52 million salary for that 2027 season is guaranteed. Read that again. The final year of his current deal, worth over $50 million, isn't locked in. That means if things go sideways between now and then, Baltimore technically has an out. It also means Lamar has every reason to want clarity long before that season ever arrives. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Lamar's deal also blocks the Ravens from using the franchise tag or the transition tag on him once this contract runs out. Most star quarterbacks in this league don't have that protection. Teams use those tags all the time to keep control over a player, even when a long-term deal can't get done. Lamar took that option completely off the table for Baltimore. On top of all that, he also has a no-trade clause. So think about what that combination actually means. No guaranteed money in year 3, no tag option for the front office, and full control over any trade destination if things ever get to that point. That's not a normal quarterback situation. That's a player who built himself real leverage. And leverage like that doesn't just sit there and use forever. Naturally, Baltimore saw this coming. The front office tried to work out a new extension with Lamar during the offseason, hoping to get ahead of the situation before it became a distraction. Talks happened. Conversations took place. But in the end, the two sides couldn't reach an agreement. Instead of a new long-term deal, the Ravens restructured Lamar's existing contract. That's usually a short-term fix, something teams do to free up cap space right now while pushing bigger problems further down the road. And that's exactly what happened here, because that restructure created a projected $84.3 million cap hit for the 2027 season. Let that number sink in for a second. $84 million against the cap for one player in one single year. That's not a number most franchises can build a competitive roster around. It practically forces Baltimore's hand. Either you get another extension done before that season hits, or you're staring down a cap situation that could cripple the rest of the roster. That's the kind of financial pressure that creates real tension if it drags on too long. A number that big doesn't just sit there quietly. It puts a clock on everything, and it's exactly the type of situation that gets a franchise quarterback's name floated around the league by people paying close attention. One team in particular jumped out immediately. ESPN's Dan Graziano recently brought up Jackson landing in Miami as a long-shot outcome while breaking down the Dolphins' ongoing search at quarterback. Now, before you panic, long shot means exactly that. It's not a prediction. It's not insider knowledge that a trade is coming. But the fact that a name like Lamar's even gets mentioned in that conversation tells you something about how unresolved the situation really is. Here's what makes this particular connection stick, though. Lamar Jackson grew up in South Florida. He starred at Boynton Beach Community High School before heading off to Louisville, where the rest of his story with football took off. Miami isn't some random destination pulled out of thin air. It's home. Think about what that would actually look like. A hometown kid, a two-time MVP, coming back to play in front of the community that watched him grow up. That's not just a football trade. That's one of the biggest stories the NFL could possibly produce. The kind of storyline that dominates headlines for weeks. You can feel why that idea has legs even as a long shot. But a homecoming story only means something if there's actually a need on the other end. And that's where Miami's own situation starts to matter just as much as Baltimore's. Right now, Malik Willis is Miami's starting quarterback heading into the season. That's not exactly a name that inspires long-term confidence around the league, and ESPN projections back that up. The outlook has Miami finishing near the bottom of the standings, which usually means one thing for a rebuilding franchise: a shot at drafting a quarterback early in the 2027 draft. Here's the thing. A high draft pick sounds nice, but it comes with risk. Rookie quarterbacks take time to develop, and there's no guarantee a young prospect turns into anything close to what Lamar already is. Miami could spend a top pick and still be searching for answers 2 or 3 years later. That's exactly why a name like Lamar Jackson becomes so much more appealing than a random rookie. You're not talking about projection or potential. You're talking about a proven 2-time MVP who already knows how to win games and carry a franchise. If you're the Dolphins and you're staring down a quarterback problem with no easy fix, Lamar represents a completely different kind of solution. But none of this becomes real unless Baltimore's own situation actually turns messy first. And when you step back and look at everything the Ravens have going for them right now, that outcome feels a lot less likely than the headlines might suggest. Let's be honest with each other here. The most likely outcome by far is that Lamar Jackson stays right where he belongs, wearing purple and black. Reports say he's already embraced new offensive coordinator Declan Doyle's system, which matters a lot considering everything else changing around him. Baltimore fired longtime head coach John Harbaugh and brought in Jesse Minter, a massive shift for this organization after so many years of stability. If Lamar buys into that new system, and this team puts together a healthy, bounce-back season, all of this trade talk quiets down fast. A strong year could push Baltimore right back into the playoff picture and could set up exactly the kind of record-setting extension conversation both sides actually want. Nobody in that building wants to lose a 2-time MVP. The path to keeping him is right there in front of everyone. That said, the trade scenario doesn't disappear completely, and you need to understand why. It only becomes relevant if the season disappoints and negotiations turn contentious somewhere down the line. Even in that world, Lamar stays firmly in control. That no-trade clause means he decides which destinations are even acceptable to him. Baltimore would also have to make a brutal decision of its own, choosing whether trading a 2-time MVP actually beats the alternative of letting him play out the final year of his deal. Miami's appeal in that hypothetical is obvious. A homecoming, a warm weather market, the chance to become the face of a franchise that desperately needs one. But acquiring a player like Lamar wouldn't come cheap. It would require an enormous financial commitment on top of a massive package of draft capital. It would instantly reshape Miami's entire outlook as a franchise. Baltimore has every reason in the world to prevent that scenario from ever becoming reality. Here's where all of this leaves us. Lamar Jackson's contract creates a situation most franchise quarterbacks never deal with. No guaranteed money in that final season, no franchise tag protection, and full no-trade control sitting in his hands. Baltimore tried to fix it with an extension, came up short, and settled for a restructure that leaves an $84.3 million cap, number looming over 2027. That's the backdrop that made a name like Miami even worth mentioning in the first place. What this really means for Baltimore is simple. The clock is ticking, whether people want to admit it or not. Another extension is the obvious fix, and there's real reason to believe it happens if the season goes well under the new coaching staff. But until Lamar actually puts pen to paper on a new deal, speculation like this Dolphins connection is going to keep popping up, no matter how unlikely it actually is right now. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Baltimore gets a new extension done with Lamar before the situation ever gets close to serious? Or does this front office wait too long and let the tension build? Drop your take in the comments. I want to hear exactly how you see this playing out.
And if you're a true Ravens fan and love keeping up with everything happening around the team, don't leave this video without sharing it with a friend who's just as passionate. They're definitely going to enjoy this. See those videos on your screen right now? I picked the first one especially for you, and the other is recommended by YouTube. Go check them out, and I'll see you in the next video.